Hi everybody, this is Katie. Welcome to the next lesson. I'm putting this little video in lesson 15, it's 15.1 right now, because I think we have some more configurations that we need to do for our server before we can go on to properly work with our domain controller and Active Directory. Now maybe you figured this out and you fixed it already, or fixed Active Directory and configured domain, so check yours before. But if you've been just following along with the videos and the labs that I've put out there, then chances are that your domain controller isn't promoted or isn't promoted. Well, your Active Directory isn't configured properly, and your server isn't promoted as a domain controller. So you'll have a couple notifications when you look in your dashboard, a couple errors, things that we need to fix. And in order for a lot of these labs to go on, when we go on with the next chapters, we need to have our domain controller working. So I need to fix that on mine, and I wanted to make a video so that you can fix it on yours if you need to. So go ahead and open up your dashboard. Let's take a look first before we deal with our exclamation points. I'm on server B, which is where you've been working for this class. I think I had mentioned go ahead and pick one server and keep working with it throughout this semester. And the one that I've been working on is server B. So I'm going to first go to local server, and I see I'm server B. I want to set up a work group and configure my IP. So I'm going to go over here to Ethernet 0. I'm going to click on that, and then I have Ethernet. I'm going to right click and go down to Properties. Then I'm going to go down to TCP/IP version 4, properties of that, and I want to assign a static IP. So my IP for server B, I have it listed in the document, is going to be 10.10.1.2, and I should list the other information too. 10.10.1.2. Now this, we're changing the subnet mask to 255.255.0.0 because we have subnetting going on. And then we want to set our default gateway. Hold on, let me check my number or my default gateway address, and we'll change that as well. Okay, the default gateway we're going to set to 10.10.1.250. So if you have your other servers and you want to configure them, server A, set the IP to 10.10.1.1, same subnet mask, same default gateway. And then server C, 10.10.1.3, same subnet mask, same default gateway. And then our DNS server, we're going to set to 10.10.1.200. Okay. Let's go over to advanced. Oh, I'm going to leave that the same, and then I'll hit OK here and close here and exit out of here. Okay. Got our IP address assigned. Let me check what else we need to set. Okay, the next thing that we're going to do on our server is configure our domain controller so that we can join our work group and hopefully have our DNS working properly. So I have these errors up here, and I think you do too. If you if you don't, you've already fixed it. You can change your work group already, but you catch up with us in a second. But if you have this message here that says promote this server to domain controller, we want to finish configuring this. So I'm going to go and click on that, and we need to set up our domain. So this takes a few minutes. Deployment configuration. We have options of adding this domain to an existing domain. We can create a new one, or we can add a domain to an existing forest. So we're going to add a new forest here, pretending or assuming this is all of our new information. Our root domain name. Let's see. On real quick. Okay, add a new forest. We're going to name this server 2012.local. So a domain, again, it's the top level of our structure. And hit next. Takes a little bit of time. Trying to write notes at the same time so that you can follow along too. Okay. This we should just leave as is. DNS server, global catalog. That is our server. You can enter in a password for restore mode. You can use the same one as your server, but make sure you write it down. And then you can hit next. Okay, we need to create a zone, so we can delegate that. Okay, let's hit next to that. We could go back and create a zone. The default value is already being used. I don't know if you'll get that message or not. I have multiple, I've already configured that on another system, so I'm going to hit next. It gave me my suggestion. If yours didn't, it just went on. So my new NetBIOS domain name is server 2012.0. Yours might not do that if you didn't configure it already. But I did the same configuration on server C. Okay, we'll leave those the same. Hit next. This is the name of my domain, server2012.local. The NetBIOS name is either server 2012 or server 2012.0. Mine changed that again because I already have a NetBIOS name of that domain on my system. And these are just the other properties that you've set up. You want global cataloging, it's a DNS server, you don't want DNS delegation, here's where our log files are going to be stored, and we can hit next. It will go through the prerequisites, and then you should be able to install. I didn't have these errors before, so let me check my verification certificate. Servers installed. Yep. don't think that you'll have these errors. So if you don't, go ahead and hit install. Let me try to fix mine real quick. And then I'll catch up with you in 1 second. Okay, I fixed my problem. Let me tell you what it was in case you had the same problem. I had one error that said Active Directory certificates were installed. So I went and removed it. If you have a red error when you get to this point, then remove Active Directory certificate services. If you go up to Tools, well, Manage, remove roles and features. Next, you'll see Active Directory certificate services installed, and I removed that. So I clicked on it, removed it, hit next, and it uninstalled. I'm not 100% sure that that was the conflict. I'm going to add it back in because we're using Active Directory certificates in. So if you didn't get an error, don't uninstall yours. If you got an error, uninstall it. My error might have been because I named my domain name, my forest, something that I already have in my servers, in my server pool. So when I went back and went through this again, I named mine server 2012 r2.local. Leave your server 2012 .local, that's fine. So I do have some warnings. That's okay. I know I have a static IP. I did that first. But I don't have any major errors now, so now I can go ahead and hit install, and it'll finish installing Active Directory domain services. We're promoting this server to become a domain controller, so it can control all of the users in groups and objects that are going to be inside of our tree. If you get stuck and you have any questions here, give me an email, kvandermeer, you know my email address, at grsdc.edu, and we can walk through it. But essentially, the two things you need to do before we can go on to our next project, and this is in the workbook, you need to configure and change your IP addresses to what are listed here. You need to configure your Active Directory domain controller. So that's promoting server B to a domain controller. You're going to add the domain name of server2012.local. This is still processing, and then you'll hit a finish point at some point. It takes just a few minutes. We need to also then go back and change our work group to, we want to go back and do, oh no, don't sign me out. Okay, we need to change our work group name. Oh, okay, it's restarting. That's fine. But we need to change that to server 2012.local as well. And that's back in the properties of the computer. You can fast forward if you want while your system's rebooting too, or if you're already at a good spot and have already rebooted. DNS, we're going to go and configure that. DNS suffix, that's kind of in the workgroup name. Fix those, configure. Try to make this organized. Waiting. I should pause it until it boots back up, I suppose. Can do that. Okay, that finished. Logging back in. Notice my domain name changed. Mine's server 2012 R2. Yours should be server 2012. I should change that as well. Change my passwords all the time. Dang it. Or B. Okay, I got the right one and now I need to change it. Whoops. After, your password should be up for changing pretty soon. Just set a new password, write it down. That's what I just did on my sticky notes. Write it down so that you can still log into your servers. And let's go back and change our workgroup name now. Okay, this is a good sign. Right now on my dashboard, let's see more things while it's coming up. See what exclamation points I still have. See what I've got down here that's working. Ideally, we want these all green. Ooh, something happened. Powered off. Okay. Big deal. No big deal. Probably powered just from when I shut down. Okay, everything's looking there. Good there. I'm going to go over to my server. Okay. All right, you'll notice this is changed to the IP address that we set in there. Our domain name changed. This said our work group. Oh, I should set that. I should change that. Or make sure that that's now the domain that this server belongs to. So when you go to the properties of your server and then click on here, if it still says work group, then something in that last process didn't happen. But see if you can now go to the change option here. And if you didn't properly promote it to a domain controller, then you'll be able to go right in here and you can add it to a member of this domain. So we did that when we went through and configured our domain controller. So you should be all set right there. But just verify that. So I'll write a note, may happen automatically. And mine did. atomically, automatically. All right. One other thing. Let's check let's check everything real quick. So there's my last thing. This last error is because I didn't go back to web app. That's okay. I'm gonna ignore it. But my DNS, my DHCP should be working fine. DNS. Let's go over there. Right click. I'm just gonna look at my. Okay, everything good. That error, that exclamation point has to do with the IIS. Okay. All right, so now we have our domain properly installed without any errors. Now this allows us to do things like use Active Directory again, where you can launch Active Directory. You have a domain now set up. You can now create users, things like that we did in our first class. Before we didn't have that ability. So I'm going to just double check our next project while I have you on the line. Our next project is to edit, is to go to ADSI for 15-2. And before, if you attempt to do this and you don't have Active Directory set up, you'll get an error message. And now I don't get an error message, so we're good to go to our next project. If you get an error message at this point, it's because Active Directory is not set up properly, which is a problem. I might go back and install my certificate services as well. I'll let you know if that creates any problems. So thanks for listening. I hope you can figure it all out to get it all configured properly. You don't have to turn any screenshots in for this lab. But I do make sure, again, you change your IP and you configure it as a domain controller. And when you set it to server 2012.local, make sure you go back to properties. Make sure your domain name has changed. That may happen automatically once you reboot. So I don't know, I call that domain. And our forest name, that is server 2012.local. That should really go right here. Well, I already have it there. I'll just add forest name. All right. That wasn't a very smooth video, but I think you got the idea of it, and I think everything's going to be configured properly, so we can go on to the next lab. So I'll have do one thing. No screenshot. Just say, how did it go? Easy, horrible, perfect. All right. Next lab, 15-2. Thanks, guys.